Hello, good
Good
morning.
morning.
How is everybody out there? Go ahead and leave us a comment. I'm seeing some come in now we were asking you all about your superpower. If you had any superpower, what would it be? So go ahead and let us know that you're on. Leave us a comment there on live. It looks like we have Teresa and put love in every person in the world. Oh,
Oh,
that's me. Oh my
that's a
goodness.
great
That's
superpower.
yes.
Good for
I
you.
love it. I
That's
love it.
wonderful.
I'll say another great thing about today, or a good start to the morning,
Oh,
the
the
weather.
weather.
Yeah,
I love it. I love a nice cool morning
I do too.
and seeing the change of seasons, and I love every season. I think that's why I love the Midwest
Mm-hmm.
because you get to see every season,
Yeah.
sometimes all in one day.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely love the transition from summer into fall,
It's
and
my favorite.
yeah,
It's my
definitely.
favorite. How about you guys? What's your favorite season out there? Let us know. How'd you feel about the weather this morning in your part of town?
Yeah,
Was it as nice and brisk fall morning like it was here in Columbia,
yeah,
or something else?
yeah,
So,
definitely.
looking to see here. All right, tell us your superpowers too. I'm waiting for a few more comments to come in
Uh-huh.
there,
Did you
but
put your superpower down?
I didn't.
Oh,
No, man,
okay.
this is gonna be
Well,
hard to come up with something better than Teresa's.
I
I like
know.
that
I
one.
know. That like stole the show, but
What would yours be?
um I think for those that know me, my superpower would probably be I can talk to anyone. Like
Mm,
I don't know a stranger, so maybe that's good or bad, but definitely I have that ability to approach most anyone.
mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think for me it is the one I currently probably have is trying to turn anything that may be bland or boring into something visually appealing.
Yes.
That's a goal, at least of mine.
Yes.
But as far as like an actual superpower, like if we're thinking outside the scope of what I currently got, I don't know, I say I want to read people's minds,
Oh,
but
okay.
then I'm like, I don't know, would I want to read
Oh,
people's
yeah,
minds?
yeah. You have
So
enough going on in your mind. I
I
can't
know.
imagine putting any more in that.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true. Well,
definitely.
let us know. It looks like Marcia says, very cool morning in Bethany. Okay,
Oh,
good.
great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys very
Absolutely.
much. So today's topic,
Boosting credibility.
yes, and I want to give a shout out. This was actually a requested topic. Someone had sent this in, and so thank you to whoever had requested this. We thought it's certainly a great topic, something that is a foundation in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways for
Mm-hmm.
everything in your professional and personal life.
Yeah.
And so we also encourage you, if you have ideas, please send those in to us. I have put the links in the description box. So you'll see the link to subscribe to our newsletter if you don't already have that. And then
Mm-hmm.
you'll also see the link to go ahead and click if you have some topic ideas that you'd like to see us chat about on a future Facebook Live event.
Yeah.
So when we think about this idea of credibility, I guess I'm curious, Ray. I want to. You have a really good way of looking at this, kind of you're articulate in your approach to this, because credibility can seem like a pretty wide spread idea, or even
Mm-hmm.
a basic idea.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define it?
When I think about credibility, and I know we were talking about this yesterday, and credibility to me in a nutshell is really about the worthiness of trust.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody being worthy of trusting, um, being believable.
Sure.
And I think there's so many ways we can prove that. And there is, I think you can be.
It wasn't just your normal little like frilly song, your typical song for your morning wake up call. This was "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey,
Mm,
and so it just played over and over and over again. And I'm trying so hard to keep a straight face. I'm utterly embarrassed,
hmm
and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, this public is like, what's going on
right,
here? This is a
right,
very serious crime, and your song is sitting here playing, and I felt very sheepish.
sure.
And it was certainly a time I was concerned some of my credibility had been lost just because I wasn't prepared.
Right. Right. And then, yeah. And then this backdrop music
Yeah.
is playing, and
Yeah.
this is all being recorded.
It was, and it's actually still available on the internet. So
oh, great. You know, nothing ever
It
disappears
doesn't.
totally
No, it
with
sure
this
doesn't.
internet.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard, and I'll tell you, when I think about, you're specifically talking at the beginning about the idea of being able to influence, but maybe your credibility hasn't been established yet. I started off kind of a real go-getter in my career, probably like a lot of you out there. And I just remember how difficult it was because you are working so hard to build your influence at the same time that you're building that credibility with people, because you don't have the years of experience, or you don't have the know-how or the knowledge that you gain from those years of experience. And so it's a difficult place to be sometimes. But I certainly think that there's kind of different areas, and we're going to break those
Yeah.
out today, that are important to really focus in, because being credible requires intentionality. You have to be intentional in your behaviors.
Right, right. And I think, in thinking about that influence, I think you really need to work on your credibility first,
Correct.
because part of being credible is being believable.
Yeah.
And if you haven't established yourself as somebody that people want to listen to, it's going to be very hard to influence others.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think oftentimes, at least with some of my friends and folks that I talk with, we get those confused. We get influence and credibility confused, but they are certainly two different things. Yep. So when we think about this idea of credibility, I guess I'll share the opposite side of it. This happened recently, and you're aware of this. But one of the things, there's these little things. And for me, if you're listening to our podcast, you're aware that trust is kind of an issue for me anyway. So it's not easy for me to trust. So credibility is key. But I know just recently, and I told you this, I walked out to my truck, and there was a side swipe on my truck, a big dent in the side of it. And the moment you look at it, you're like, oh my goodness, because you're figuring maybe a hit and run. I go to get in my truck, and there is a note on the window. And it was them letting me know, hey, I hit your truck. And I immediately just think, goodness, that sets the tone for how I'm going to approach this person. Her credibility was already boosted with me. And so sometimes it's not these big, we're going to talk about different areas, but it's not these big elaborate things that you do. It's simple things. Just by her leaving that note immediately put some trust and some faith in me that we're going to handle this differently. And we had a great conversation, and we're going to work together to get it fixed. But it certainly doesn't have to be large scale events to boost your credibility.
Absolutely not. And I think that speaks to kind of the first point of building your credibility, and that just demonstrated her character.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. That she was doing something that demonstrated who she was as a person. Right? And she didn't have to leave that note. No, I mean, you probably would have found her on a camera, because our garages are pretty good about taking pictures of everybody in everybody's car. However, she left you a note, and that demonstrated what a good person she was, or the intentions that she had.
Absolutely.
So you're right, it started it off on a great foot.
Yeah, and I think that, and you see on your screen here now, I want us to look at this idea of credibility in these three different bubbles, if you will. And the very first one is character. I think when we think about that, and we'll break these all out a little bit more, but it is certainly where you start. It is doing that honest self-reflection and recognizing, are you kind of in integrity with who you say you are, with how you act on a day-to-day basis? Are you aware of how you come off to other people?
Right.
What else do you think is involved in character?
No, I think that's true. And I think it's not only interaction between you and another person, but when people watch you interact.
Yeah.
And so even from somebody watching you from across the room, are they seeing you for who you are? Because when your words and your actions don't line up, it doesn't matter how much you profess that you're a good person.
Right.
And I used to have a friend, and all the time she would say that. She was like, well, I'm a good person. I don't know why they don't think I'm a good person. And I could just hear, those Shakespeare lines in my head, like he doth protest too much,
Hmm.
because she'd have to say that,
Sure.
and I'm like, who are you trying to convince?
Sure.
Because your words and your actions really don't match,
Right.
and it's not the intentions you have in your head; it's the behaviors, how you treat other people that people are going to judge you by.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it's fair; I'm just saying it's life.
Right.
So it is how you treat other people, how people see you interact, the stories you tell,
Hmm.
right? The jokes you think are funny, um, the way you conduct yourself and comport yourself says a lot about, are you worthy of trust?
Absolutely.
Right.
And are you intentional about trying to build it with other people too? Trust, that
Mm-hmm.
is. Are you intentionally investing in interpersonal relationships and really trying to create that foundation of understanding of who you are? Are you being vulnerable?
Right.
And not just that predictable trust. I know we've talked about Lencioni,
Right.
and he references that a lot, and you can look it up on the internet now, but it is the idea of, I mean, a vulnerability based trust. That's what's going to really deepen some of those relationships. Is, are you putting yourself out there? I think Brene Brown talks a lot about that too.
Yeah. We were thinking about how our emotional intelligence plays into the idea of credibility. And I think there's the connection, because also in this idea of character and thinking about credibility and believability with this is, I also think, comes your moods.
Yeah.
And if you fly off the handle easily and you're extremely moody and you're hard to get along with, and one day you're up and the next day you're down, and nobody really knows how to interact with you and they're tiptoeing around you, or then that also is just like, I'm not going to bother today.
Hmm.
Right? So it doesn't really at that point matter how much you know.
Right.
If nobody's willing to come to you for that knowledge,
Right.
then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very hot topic area right now when we talk about
Yes.
emotional intelligence, because it does play an absolutely key role
Hmm.
in a lot of this. I think it's kind of that underlying foundation of us as viewed as professionals.
Yeah.
So, in the next bubble,
Hmm.
when we think about this, and we referenced it a little bit, but, and you talk about how you conduct yourself, a lot of this plays into how you communicate.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and let's be very, very honest at this point. It's not just your words, and I don't mean just the words you're actually using to communicate. I'm talking about that initial communication that people see through your appearance.
Right.
Right?
There is definitely something we call visual credibility.
Yeah.
Um, and people make that assessment
Yeah.
within seconds. And we know through lots of research that our brain is making some of those decisions for us,
Right.
right? Because there's so much information bombarding us all at once that we have a system within our brain that does some of the sorting for us. And that's just the way we've stayed safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? That amygdala sends out those
Right.
responses because we can't handle all of that information at once. And so those first impressions sometimes are managed for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're trying to get better at bringing those to the forefront and managing those things, but we just simply know that those first impressions sometimes are sorted for us. So
Right.
that visual credibility happens very quickly. And I'll give you an example. So we were talking about, when has your credibility been lost, or when has your credibility been boosted? And it's been years ago, but one of the clients that I was going to be doing some work with was MFA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to go and get a sense of who my customer was, and I
Mm-hmm.
was going to be touring some of their retail facilities, and where the trucks came into, and the field applicators, and not just your break times, and those kinds of convenience stores. So I was visiting several of those operations in the field, And so those that know me, I've got lots of cowboy boots, lots of belt buckles, and I definitely, that is who I am or was off screen in a former life. So it was very easy for me to think about, I'm not going to be in a suit, I'm not going to be in, work or dress clothes.
Sure.
And so I donned those types of apparel.
Sure.
And I hit the road and visited a lot of my customers dressed like that. And I think when I walked in and they saw me, it was just like, oh, okay. So this isn't, the business professor
Right.
from the college
Right.
that's coming to visit. Like, she actually might know something. And I think they could tell by the dirt on the boots. It wasn't crocodile or alligator skin or ostrich or anything like that.
Right.
Like, these were functioning work boots that, sort cattle.
Right.
So I think just that visual credibility. Now, I had also done my research, so I knew about, variable speed spreaders and things like that. I had done some homework as well, but that visual credibility was just enough of a jump that at least they would open up and start talking to me. And I gained that through just my apparel, that initial foot in the door. Don't get me wrong, I had to do some homework, but that's also a way that we communicate. Hey, I am worthy of some level of trust, at least to walk in your door.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, it was really interesting when we did a previous Facebook Live just on kind of professional dress, but it really started the conversation behind the scenes about dressing for that credibility, depending on clients or who you're visiting with, and I thought it was something I honestly had never thought about. But there's a reason why. For example, thinking about law enforcement officers, their attire, there's a reason why they
Right.
wear what they wear. There's a reason why we wear what we wear when we're in training, or depending on what client we're standing in front of. So you're absolutely right. That credibility, that appearance factor, it's a big element to it.
Yeah.
So it's not saying go out and change your entire wardrobe by any means,
No.
but just think about it.
Right, because it does say something about you.
Yeah.
And I think there's that need to know, is it saying what you want it to?
Absolutely.
And everybody makes those decisions for themselves. So just be mindful. It is giving an impression, and is it giving the impression that you want it to give? And appearance is only one thing.
It is.
Because there's all other more of the traditional types of communication. I mean, the words that you're using, the writing, right? Your grammar, your spelling, and I know those sound very old-fashioned, but be that as it may, it can communicate something about you.
Right.
And so again, is it saying what you want it to say? Because you're in charge of that, right? That pencil or that keystroke is not to blame, and if you have something that's riddled with errors, in somebody's mind, it might be, well, this person isn't detail oriented, or maybe this person doesn't care. And I'm not saying that you don't. I'm just saying it might appear that way to someone else.
Absolutely.
And if you're trying to be worthy of trust and believable in what you know, those things might be communicating the opposite.
Yes. And I think, when we think about it, you mentioned the words, but it's also those nonverbals and those paraverbals when we think about communication and credibility. Because again, if your body language isn't lining up with the words that you're actually speaking, that's a big, big, big credibility kind of diminisher in my mind. Because I'm the type of person that will actually read the person before I listen to the words that you're saying. And so I'm determining, again, how credible can I see this person as before I'm actually listening to the content. And there's a lot of us out there that are like that. So recognize that those things have to line up. And the rate in which you're speaking, the tone in which you're speaking, all of those paraverbals.
Right.
So
absolutely,
lots of things to communication. I'd even venture to say sometimes the channel of communication that you use. This was actually difficult for me in my first career, because again, I'm trying to boost my credibility, and I was working with clients who I always would want to talk to on the phone or see in person, and I'm getting text messages, and I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't, this is a business world. And I just remember thinking that I wasn't aligning the right communication channel with it. And so for them, that was what they needed as well. So they needed the text messaging, and I needed to back off a little bit on my judgment there. But yes, think about all elements of communication.
Right.
So,
and that can be audience specific.
it
Just
absolutely can.
Just like how I dress to go into those facilities.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It can be audience specific.
So we'd like to hear from you, all right, as we're going to kind of wrap up our last bubble here and chat a little bit about it. We'd love to hear from you, and what are some ways, maybe in these first two areas, that you've worked to boost your credibility? What are some things that you've done that you've been successful at, or what have some other people done that have helped you find them to be more credible? If you want to put those in the comments for us, we'll keep an eye on that. Y'all are being quiet today.
Yeah. It's morning, and they're soaking it in, hopefully.
Yeah.
Definitely.
More coffee, please.
Yep.
That's me right now.
Yep.
So as we kind of talk about, again, the last element, I guess, if you will, and this conversation could go so much deeper, I think, because credibility is such a broad topic. But intellect.
Okay.
All right. I would suggest that there is a need to have continuous learning to be deemed as credible. If you become complacent in your skill set, or if maybe ego takes over, and we just think we know enough to be complacent with where we're at, I don't know if that's as credible. What are your thoughts?
I would agree. I think anytime, we're trying to be somebody worthy of trust, right? So we're asking for people to believe in us, believe in what we're saying, believe in the information we're bringing to you. We need to be relevant. We need to be current. We can't be, it's 2021 and it's getting to be the last quarter, almost into the last quarter of 2021. We can't be spewing data and research from 2017.
Right.
We need to be, and especially in an age where information is more readily available. It's not always accurate. And as a journalist, you have to check multiple sources. Absolutely. You do. And you have to especially check both sides of an argument. And I think that's what a true intellect does, is takes both sides of every argument. So if there's a preponderance of evidence in one particular area, I say do the thing and dig up the counter evidence and really just weigh both options. You ultimately get to make your own mind up, and I think that's what I love about being a grown-up, is I get to think what I want to think and what's best for my situation, but I want to know what's happening on both sides of those things. So continue to make yourself relevant by growing your knowledge in a particular area of interest or your own industry. But you can't be presenting data that's 6 years old. Not anymore. Right? Especially with the methods that we have for information distribution. But you certainly can't get only one viewpoint.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense anymore.
No. And I think that, that kind of even goes back to the communication element too, of like listening, to be able to understand both sides of an argument. You have to be willing to listen. And again, if we let our ego kind of get in the way, that we think we know what we know and that's the right way, that can be damaging in a lot of ways, to our credibility, but also to those relationships with others.
Right.
I think of, when I think of this intellect, I also, for me, it's important to stay up to speed on what are some opportunities for visually enhancing things too. For us, it's training. I don't know what it might look like for everyone out there, but how do we find new digital ways, virtual ways to do things? All of us entered a remote environment last year, most of us, I should say, entered a remote environment last year. Were we cognizant of how we were presenting things and how we were communicating to each other in a visually appealing manner too? And I think some of that requires just staying up on technology.
Mm-hmm.
So find something that you enjoy reading, for that element, but then also find different information on research, keep data up to date, and then also look at what's some new technology that's available, because that's ever changing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we often talk with our clients about benchmarking.
Yeah.
And, look at what the best are doing. And is that something you can mimic? You might not have the million or $1 billion resources, but what parts of it can you take away? And look even outside your own industry. Like, we don't even look at what other training
No.
companies are doing. We look at other information providers.
Right.
And what are they doing? Hospitals look at hotels. So look outside your own industry.
Mm-hmm.
And look at benchmarking
Mm-hmm.
in those ways as ways to grow and expand your knowledge, and just stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
Just stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would agree. And I being the age that I am, and sometimes I do just get very comfortable in knowing what I know. And sometimes I'm just like, that's all. I
Sure.
don't want to know
Understandably
anymore.
so, yeah.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But we have to.
Yeah.
We have to, in order to stay credible.
Absolutely. And I think when you know more, you can present your thoughts more articulately, and that also helps with your credibility. If you're just coming at something, I think about what we were talking about yesterday in a podcast you were listening to, and how the host kept kind of just rambling off, and you couldn't, you said you couldn't really understand what he was saying at the end, and it makes you think. You actually thought to yourself, like,
I wonder if he knows.
Yeah. Is this his own opinion, or is this actually coming from insights, data, research? And we'll do those things. We do things like prefacing, our statements before we say things.
Yeah.
And I wonder occasionally if that is because we're not coming at it with those insights or with that data or that research to be able to be confident in what we're articulating.
Right. Boy, we could do a whole Facebook on assertive communication, because
Yeah.
that loops us back up to, starting a sentence with, this might be a stupid idea. And if we're trying to build our own credibility, or if we're even trying to be seen as a serious individual in our companies, don't start any sentence with, well, this might be dumb, but, or, I know I'm talking out the top of my head, or, don't. Yeah. There's all kinds of things that just right away is like, well, then why should I listen to you? But we can do that another time.
Really.
So
absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, I don't know. What are some final thoughts, I guess, when you think about this idea of credibility?
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes some intentionality. Look at people that you believe to be credible within your organization. What are they doing? How can you, set up a time to meet with them, really, and just pick their brain. But tell them what you're doing. Tell them that's why you want to meet with them. Be overt in that communication and see what it takes, and what they had to do to get where they got, and then chart a plan. Mm-hmm. Right? And work on it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't just like fall on your head.
No, it has to be intentional.
It will if it doesn't work. Fall on your head.
Absolutely.
But it can be done.
And the whole thing is, I know we started this out at the beginning saying kind of be credible in what you know, and be, move forward in that as well. You have to be believable. So it's got to be something that's kind of in your lane. But at the same time, if there's something that you want to branch out and become credible in, then you can do that.
Sure.
All of us are equipped with different talents that can turn into strengths. Mm-hmm. That kind of leads us into what we're going to talk to you all about we're doing next month. But you can establish credibility in things that maybe aren't as familiar with you, but you got to put in the work.
Right.
Got to put in the work.
Absolutely.
So, talking a little bit about that, we will have another session coming up. It's going to be an in-person. Are you excited?
I am. I'm thrilled.
Talk a little bit about it.
Well, we are going to be doing an open enrollment on discovering your strengths. So we're going to be using our Clifton Strengths assessment, and everybody will be taking that and then coming to class with me, and we'll be going over that. So you'll actually get your profile and your 34 strengths, and then we'll talk about how we can use that, how you can tap into those strengths, and how you best can turn those, your talent themes, into the strengths, and how you're using them in the workplace and in your personal life, and just all kinds of good stuff. So I hope you'll join me.
Yeah, I gotta say, Clifton Strengths was my favorite. When I started with you all day one, that was what you had me do, was go through my Clifton Strengths profile, and it was really eye-opening.
Yeah.
But there were some areas, kind of getting back to our topic today too, where I was like, man, I might not have this immediately as a talent, but I really like the idea of this, and I want to be seen as credible in this area too. And so spend some time, spend some time in it, and just be intentional. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
So think
You're
of those.
worth it.
Yeah,
You're worth it.
you absolutely are. Think about your 3 areas again: character, communication, and intellect. I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm looking here; y'all have stayed pretty quiet on the on our chat. But if you have something that comes up after we end today and you're thinking about it, shoot us an email. mti@missouri.edu. Again, we do these for you all. And so if you have any other topic ideas, anything like that, right?
No, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to do it.
Let us know. And I don't know, I'm going to have you do your sign off then, right?
Go be great.